Hello, and welcome to the penultimate event of the S.Q.U.I.D conference. If you're here, you're probably considering making quantum information science an important part of your career. Because the field is so new and the career paths available are so diverse, you probably have a lot of questions about the different things you can do to build your career and the different tracks that are available. So fortunately, we have Tim Huynh here, the Internship Operations Specialist and Academic Liaison at IBM Quantum, who's going to give us a little bit of direction on this topic. Tim is a former student affairs and nonprofit professional with experience in career development, career attainment, and DEIB+J initiatives, with experience in internship program design, uplifting diverse and historically marginalized populations, and talent engagement, enrichment, and development. So without further ado, I'd like to hand the mic over to Tim Huynh. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for that intro, Ben. It's really funny. I haven't heard that bio in a minute, and I was like, wow, that sounds really familiar. I forgot that I actually wrote that. So I was like, wow, some of these things sound really familiar to me, and I don't know why. But I'm really happy to be here. Again, my name is Tim Huynh. I work at IBM Quantum as primarily the Internship Operations Specialist. The way, just to kind of get things I guess clear straight away. The way I tend to do these career development talks is very informal. Not only have you been doing amazing work over the last weekend, going to presentations and engaging, I also want to make sure that it's not a me talking at you kind of deal, and more of a way for you to engage with me and really get the information that you need. When I do these talks, whether they're for quantum or other industries, it's really about me trying to provide as much information, as many resources as possible for you. And to that end, I recognize that quantum is a very nebulous field, right? Some of the things that we are preparing for are for jobs that don't yet exist, that might exist in maybe 2 or 3 years. So anything I can do to help make your job or your process in getting a job or an internship in the field a little easier, that is something that I'm really committed to. So as you see, there's my email on the title page here. Feel free to shoot me an email if you'd like to connect. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find if you're in any of like the quantum spaces. But yeah, I think I can just like jump right into it. I've been with IBM Quantum for, I believe it'll be 2 years in September now. I want to say it's a little kind of unbelievable that the time has gone by so quickly, but to tell you in much of an understatement that I have learned so much about quantum and the field and industry as a whole over the last 2 years, way more than any other role I've had previously, is kind of awe-inspiring a little bit, just with how much the field changes and how much we can see people getting skills maybe a year or two ago and really growing into their own and getting into full-time roles that are really fulfilled, that they are really fulfilled by rather. And today, and even seeing interns come back at IBM as full-time staff. So I really would love for this to be as beneficial as possible. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, I invite you to either email me or connect me on LinkedIn, whatever I can do to make this easier for you. That's ultimately my goal. So let's just get right into it. So what are we here for, right? I kind of broke this up into 4 easy to digest pieces. There's going to be information on education, making the right choices for you, how you build yourself academically, outreach programs, so what IBM can offer and how you can get involved, your career in a really broad sense. So how do you set yourself up for your career? How do you decide on what to do or what you want to do? Academia versus grad school, or academia versus industry, and of course the ultimate question, grad school. And then finally, more specifically to IBM, the internships and jobs that we have available. So information about your internship program, how you might land one, and then the different roles that we have available at IBM Quantum broadly. I chose these specifically because of how broad the field is and also the kind of expectation that we have at IBM. Going into quantum personally, I don't have a quantum background or a technical background. So I fully believed, oh, I was applying to this job. Who knows if I'm going to get hired? I don't have a science background or a technical degree. But there's so much more to quantum that, and much like any other business, right? That is more than just like a researcher perspective or an engineering perspective. There are a lot of hands and a lot of effort and a lot of love that goes into this work that makes our offerings and all of our programs and a lot of our work truly in the industry as a whole really robust and really well-rounded. So this is why it's a little more broad. Again, if there's any more specifics that I can answer for you, I'm always open to doing that. But again, just as the field is ever evolving, some of the stuff that I say today might in 1 year be a little outdated, though not unreasonably so. So just be aware of that. So education, right? I'm, as our favorite little lo-fi girl is over here studying constantly. There's always a question as to like how you set yourself up in an education context of being successful in the industry. So how do you make yourself look successful on paper for, let's say, an internship? What degrees are people looking for? I always like to say that instead of asking yourself, what are people looking for in me? You should turn that question around a little bit and say, what interests me? Um, do you like coding and solving coding problems in that way? Do you like working with things tangibly? Let's say working in a lab. Do you like building computers? Do you like that really physical aspect of actually working with tech? Do you prefer more of a like cognitive problem that you might figure out by solving a coding challenge? Do you like working on or working with people rather? So maybe that sort of like business development. There's a lot of elements that factor into quantum beyond what we might normally think of in the typical, let's say, computer science, physics, maybe even chemistry or mathematics route. Really think about the things that you enjoy and appreciate about the field or the things that really attract you about it. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that is uh, what's a good word for it? I guess concrete. And no decision you make now is ever going to lock you out of something in the future. I'm sure, let's say if you were a psych major wanting to be a rocket scientist, that might be a bigger leap. But if you're in the field of quantum and you're kind of in the periphery of something that you really want to do, but maybe not quite there are a lot of avenues for you to pivot and switch. I know a lot of folks are always worried that the major they choose in, say, undergrad or grad school ultimately determines what they do for the rest of their lives. But I will be the first to tell you, and as proof of one, that pivoting is a very common and a very actually very good thing for your career. So again, explore and really be open. I really encourage people to think about their education as more of a way to explore what they want to do without really committing to, let's say, a full-time role. I don't want to harp too much on the Qiskit YouTube channel, but Dr. Olivia Lanes, who I love working with, she's one of my favorite coworkers, has a bunch of great videos on really how to do well in figuring out what degree you want to get, what degree you should decide to get, how to land an internship, what to look for. A lot of those pieces I think are really important. I don't want to repeat too much of the information that she has in there, but it's really about asking yourself kind of the work you want to do. So if you really do like the engineering aspect of it, don't force yourself into doing a CS major, some straight computer science major, if you don't really love that work. Don't see that, don't think that computer science is the only way to get into quantum because there are so many other avenues there. And if you don't have the specific major at your school, that's not always a problem, right? So let's say your school doesn't have a specific quantum major, which most schools don't. If I remember correctly, I think it's like less than 50, I want to say the last time I checked, have a specific quantum program at them in a degree granting sense. So if that's not within your bounds of getting, say, like an official degree, don't worry about that. You can look outside the classroom. I know that, of course, working for IBM and having a promotion for Qiskit is expected, but I've been seeing the Qiskit community grow into such a vibrant and wonderful community that even if I wasn't working for IBM, I would absolutely recommend that as well. Qiskit is a great way to get involved in in like the quantum community in a really low commitment, low barrier of entry way. And I think that especially in a field that is so complex and so nebulous at times, it is very hard to break in and feel comfortable. Like Qiskit, getting involved in that, going through the textbook, getting involved in challenges and just all of the programs and activities that we offer, it really gives you a really easy way to kind of push past that barrier and say, okay, well, let me see what everyone else in the community has to offer. What do they tell me? Our artistic community ranges from folks who are very, very novice to extremely, extremely advanced, and everywhere in between. So you'll also have other employees at IBM involved in this, people at smaller institutions, or even other large organizations. And so if you are looking for a way to network without really having to go through, let's say, like the LinkedIn cold emailing, I think Qiskit's a really great way to go to really get a little bit of knowledge from folks who might be ahead of you in either their education or their career. So think about that. Think about the ways in which you can really leverage the community around you, whether digitally or physically. And then think about the ways you can get involved outside of school. So this S.Q.U.I.D conference, for example, is a really, really great example of that. I was just telling um, excuse me, I'm like a little sick right now, so I apologize. I was just telling Ben and Jade earlier that this conference was so amazing to see and that I'm so happy to be a part of it because it's so great to see a community gather together. and work together to put something on like this on for the love of the industry, for the love of what they do, this is something that would really help show you as, let's say, an applicant to an internship, that you have a strong commitment to quantum in whatever capacity that might be, that you have an interest in putting together organizations and putting together events that aren't necessarily mandated by a school project or a school assignment, let's say, right? So again, think about ways that aren't really necessarily traditional of how you might be able to expand the education and really learn different things. I use the word education very broadly here, as not just the specific knowledge you gain within a classroom as like for a grade or from a course, but also what you can learn about the field as a whole and what about it attracts you and where you feel like you can find your place in it. The next piece I think is outreach programs. I think a lot of folks think that outreach programs are a, I don't know, a recruitment pool and solely a recruitment pool. And while there are times we look for folks who participate in these as standouts for potentially asking if they're interested in internships or what they're looking for, a lot of our outreach programs are also really trying to spread and democratize the idea of quantum education. So I just wanted to highlight a few of them. Brian Ingmanson, one of my favorite coworkers as well, just posted a video on YouTube about what was coming up for May, June, and I believe July. So KITS applications open in June. So if you're part of the KISS community and you really want to be an advocate, those open up soon. The KISS Global Summer School, where there's 2 weeks of lectures, labs, and a huge community of fellow students, will be opening up soon. I believe the information will be shared out on the KISS Twitter. And there's also the Quantum Explorers, which is a self-paced kind of game-based quantum computing program for anyone high school level and above. The dates are on the slides here. I really love all of these offerings because there's a little bit of something for everybody, and don't feel as though you have to participate in all of them or you can't participate in more than one. We open you to participate in as many as you feel comfortable taking on at the time. I'm actually really excited for the Quantum Explorers. I really love the gamification of knowledge, and I really love being able to kind of engage with knowledge in that way. So if you are someone who really loves gaming, honestly, I probably do a little too much in all honesty. That might be something you want to explore. Again, this is a really easy way for you to get into a network and community of people who are very like-minded and share the passions and creativity for quantum as you do. Again, these are offerings that are offered to you in a variety of ways, that there's a multiple points of engagement here so that you can feel comfortable getting into the community any way you feel fit. I again strongly encourage you to access and really engage with the KISS community, whether you are just doing it as a self-paced walking through the textbook on your own, or being a part of, say, the summer school, or have aspirations to be a KISS advocate. Outreach programs, specifically through IBM Quantum that I'm familiar with, are really, really great ways for you to make yourself a little more known in the community, not just to folks who are also in the community, but also, let's say, IBMers as well. We have so many stories of interns in previous years saying, oh, well, I became a KISS advocate and I started communicating with an IBMer, and then they connected me to somebody else who was working on a project that really interested me. And that just started a really beautiful chain reaction of this person getting more involved, networking, and then ending up becoming an intern. And so that might be your goal. You might want to intern with us, you might want to intern with somebody else. Having all of these as kind of your laundry list of experiences that you have been engaging with in terms of the quantum community and quantum industry really help you not only appear like a more attractive candidate, but also teach you a little more about what it is that you might want to do in the future. The last piece, or the third piece rather, sorry, is career. So I say these very, very, very broadly. Career to me is more than just, say, the thing you do for work. Some people, I think, feel like you have to be like Michelle Yeoh and be everything everywhere all at once. You have to have every skill possible, every which way to be as attractive as possible. And honestly, like that might work for some, and from some other people it might not. I think the question often is like, how do I choose what it is that I want to do? And I think the answer to that question is actually towards the end of it, right? So what is it that you want to do? Like I said earlier, if you are not super into coding, you might not want to pursue that element of quantum computing. You might want to go into something a little more hardware related, or maybe business development or DevOps. If you have a knack for education and facilitation, say like Ryan and myself, you might want to go more of the educational route. There's so many different places that you can be. I always say that folks should ask yourself first, what are the things that you do like, and then what are the things that you don't like? What are experiences you've had in the past that really maybe rubbed you the wrong way? I always tell all the students that I talk to that a lot of the things we learn about the things that we like, we learn more about through the things that we don't like. So having experiences that we say, you know what, like I did that, it really wasn't for me. These are the things I didn't like about that experience. Help us tailor our choices in the future to figure out what it is that we do like about a future role or future experience. So you can ask yourself, what am I doing right now? If you love putting on events, say like the S.Q.U.I.D conference, and you really like the organizational piece and bringing people together around a common interest or common cause, you might want to move towards the community aspect of quantum. You might be okay with the coding pieces and learn that technical piece and understand quantum as a concept, but maybe you don't really want to get into the nitty gritty technical details. You might just want to work more with people or the community at large. So workforce development, for example, on the team that I'm on, is a great place for me because I enjoy the technical aspect of things, but maybe don't have the technical background. And I really enjoy bringing people together. So in my mind, I think, okay, well, how can I do that? I can develop internship programs, right? I can develop programs for the community at large to help get more involved so that technical people can get into those roles. I really strongly encourage you to think about what you're doing now and where you ultimately want to end up, and not in a where I want to end up will always be where I want to end up, but more of, in this point in time, where would you see yourself if you had a full-time role? What would you enjoy doing? And if you don't have an answer to those questions, that's totally okay too. Instead of thinking, oh, I need an answer to this question of where I want to end up, you can go on the opposite end and say, I'm open to whatever experience will teach me about where I want to end up. A lot of people ask us whether they want to, or whether it's more beneficial to academia or industry. Full caveat, I understand that I work in industry, and so my answer is a little biased, of course. So take that as you will. But I think it's important, again, to ask yourself the questions of like, what do the benefits and drawbacks of each kind of choice have on you? So in industry, you typically don't have as much flexibility to do the things that you want to do per se. So you don't have I guess I should rephrase that. You just don't have as much free reign, I guess is a good way to put it. In industry, if your company is not funding a specific project, for example, you're probably not going to be able to do a project they're not funding because there's no way for you to do that project. On the flip side, academia gives a little more free reign because you're able to maybe lead projects on their own, but they're on a much smaller scale, right? Even though institutions say like in the top 10, 15 schools or all the R1 institutions, sure they have a lot of funding, but like all of it's not getting funneled to you as a PI. And so you're going to have a little bit of more freedom, but maybe on a smaller scale. Whereas in industry, you might have a larger scale, but your personal let's say interest in a specific project might not be able to go as far as you might want it to. You might still work within the realm of it, you might work in the orbit of that, but you might not work specifically on the things that say are a true core love for you. But at the same time, that's not to say that you will never get there either. It might just be a factor of we need to do these projects first, and then 1, 2, 3 projects down the line, we get to the thing that you really want to do. There's a lot of questions to be had here. I think it's a lot better to ask folks in both as to why they chose and why they stayed in the area that they did. And in all honesty, I do see a lot of folks bouncing between one or the other, backwards and forwards. So don't always feel as though an experience in one will derail your trajectory in another or will lock you into the other one. It's very common, I see, for folks to go from academia to industry or industry to academia and back again. Again, it's about being open to experiences. Um, I keep on staring at this Michelle Yeoh gift because I think that it's very fitting to say that in every single incarnation of the things that you do, I think of every single experience that you have, it's kind of a different incarnation of you taking all the experiences that you've already gained and applying it to this role here in the hopes that it will be able to be implemented into another role in the future. For those of you who are in a doctoral program, who are maybe, let's say, curious about whether they should take an industry experience for a summer, I strongly encourage you to do that if it's something you are interested in. I hear a lot of the times that doctoral students will say they're worried that an industry experience will derail their trajectory in academia. From what I've seen, it's not really the case. If you come into industry and you find out, it's not really for me, you've at least had that experience. You don't have to graduate having never had one and wondering maybe I should have done that. Again, this is something you have to have a conversation with your entire support system, whoever your advisor is, whoever your, if you do have a career advisor as well, whoever that is, having those conversations to be open and saying, hey, I would really love to explore what it's like to work in industry. I think are really important. It's ultimately you who has to advocate for you because no one else can do that unless they know what you want to do. If someone strongly discourages you, I always say, hey, ask them why. What is it about this experience that they're specifically discouraging me or they're trying to maybe veer me away from? And this works in both ends, right? Whether you're in industry and you're trying to see maybe academia is for you and someone's maybe asking you to maybe not look at that, or the other way around. It's always really important to really look at things from all angles. And I think that's maybe the biggest hitch that I've noticed with our applicants is they're very worried about whether a singular experience either in industry will derail their academic trajectory or vice versa. And then the last piece is really about finding your interests, as I mentioned before. So there's software, hardware, research, and then there's education, but these are not the only four categories, right? There's so many more elements to quantum computing and the industry at large that you can really tap into. And I think that ultimately, no one can answer that question but you. And I know I keep on repeating that, but I've noticed that at least in my several years of doing this, that if I don't repeat this, it's not something that really gets locked into the brain as hard. But the ultimate decision comes to you. So if you take survey of your entire support system, your entire network, and you gather all that data and you synthesize it into one answer, ultimately that has to be the answer that is most correct for you. I always tell people that, if you even have small minor goals, let's say that are not as full scale as I want to be CEO of IBM one day or something like that, it's really important to have a small trajectory goal saying like, in 5 years, I want to be here. And then of course, within those 5 years, that goal can change. But it's always good to have a little bit of maybe like a North Star or like a guiding light that you can use to maybe point yourself in the right direction when you're a little bit either uncertain or confused. And ultimately, I hope that all of you will kind of take these guiding questions and this advice to heart and think about, okay, what have I been told? What have I learned? What have I asked from people? What are the main points that I've seen and trends that I've seen, and how do those fit with what I want to do and what I'm interested in? Um, if you are working with somebody now, say either a manager or a PI or an academic advisor, if you have not yet set goals with them of your time working with them, I strongly encourage you to do that as well. When we have interns come through for the internship, I always tell all of them in your first few meetings with your mentors and your managers, please set goals with them, set really achievable goals that you might be able to hit in, let's say, in a 12-week program, you might hit those goals at 6 weeks, set another set of goals you might want to hit once your internship is over, and then set another goal or two of really far stretch goals that you probably won't hit within 12 weeks, but if you do would be fantastic, but ultimately you're trying to work and make progress towards that. I think having those three maybe milestones or markers are really, really key to feeling like one, you're making progress, and two, gathering enough information for you to make a smart sound choice at the end of your experience about where you want to move forward next. And into that are the IBM experiences. Sometimes I feel like this cat at work, other times I don't. Not for this SQ.U.I.D conference, but for other presentations that I do, it sometimes feels like I have to put too much into these, and this cat very much embodies who I am at certain points. I put this on here as mostly a way to kind of lighten the mood, but also as a way to kind of laugh at it a little bit, that a lot of students, particularly that I talk to, tried to put a ton of work into their internship application and really is just, I've heard of students spending like a week straight, nonstop, 3 hours a day, kind of working on an application. And while I totally admire the effort, please do not throw yourself into a state of sleep deprivation to do so. I think it's especially important when you're applying to either a job or an internship program to really make sure that you're applying in a way that is not just putting you in the best light, but also very healthy for you. So if you are applying to things, please don't do it in a way that harms your well-being or harms your sanity in any way. So our current internship program, our applications typically open around mid-September. We hire roles across the board. So I mentioned earlier, we do engineers, we do designers, software developers, researchers, business operations. We hire people in the community team. We do DevOps work. CryptoSafe is a brand new area that we're exploring and looking into. And if you don't think that there's a place in quantum for you, I can guarantee you there probably is one. You just have to either talk to people and figure out where that might be, or maybe think a little bit outside the box. The biggest question I always get, me, Olivia, Brian, my entire team, we always get this: how do we land an internship? Again, I don't want to put you to the Qiskit YouTube over and over and over again, but Dr. Olivia Lanes also did a great video on this as well. But one thing that I always try to impress upon people is the specificity that you need. So earlier when I said ask yourself what it is you want to do, think about what your interests are, and it doesn't have to be super concrete. I really, really meant that. When we have applications come in, we have thousands. And a lot of the times we do have great candidates, but it's really hard for us to hire those specific candidates that are great because they don't tell us what they want to do. The application tends to say something along the lines of, I really want to work in quantum computing. I really enjoyed learning about it, but not really within a level of specificity that tells us what team are you going to go to? Like what kind of project would you love to work on? What would you like to see as an ideal internship experience, let's say? And those are the hardest ones for us to hire because when you apply to one of our roles, you're not just applying to a singular team, you're applying to basically every team that has an opening, whose skill set or whose project might match your skill set rather. And so if it's you in an application saying, I want to work in cryogenics or fabrication or any number of things, if you can tell us one or two things very, very specifically in the things that you're either interested in or things that your experience is built into that would make you a strong candidate, those really help us in tailoring your uh, application towards the teams that we are marketing you to. So as somebody who does see your applications and also markets you to teams, if you can be a little specific either about the things that you've done and how they feed into something else, or where you want to go and what you want to get out of your internship, that is really helpful for me. And again, take this as you will. Again, I'm a little biased because I am quite literally the one who does this part of the work. So please do this for me. If you like me, please do this for me because it is very difficult for me to see a bunch of great candidates come through and market them to teams, only to have the team say, well, do they want to do this work? And I can't ask, right? Like I can't email you later and say, hey, Ben, do you want to work with lasers? Once you've applied, because you just can't do that in the hiring process. So if you can do a little bit of a blurb, a little bit of focus on your application to show us either where you want to go or how your experience is built into where you want to go or what you want to work on, that is not only helpful for you, but also us on the other end. And so that's a little bit about the internships. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot them my way in the chat, email, not Slack, LinkedIn, whatever it works for you. I can answer a little more specifically if you have a very specific question or a specific role you're kind of wondering about. And then the other half of this are the full-time roles. So we actually hire year-round. I will say, much like a lot of major companies, it's a little unpredictable as to say, when roles come up and when comes don't, because we just have so many teams that they hire all independently of each other. So, in 1 month we could have 0 roles, and another month we could have 5. Or in halfway through the month, 3 could open up and then 4 could close. And it's really unpredictable in that way. And the other piece of unpredictability is, like I said way earlier in this, is that we're kind of preparing folks for roles that don't quite exist yet, right? Quantum is such an emerging field, even though it's been around for a little bit of time, that the skills we're kind of helping people train and get to know and figure out are not skills that we are yet hiring for in terms of the field as a whole. But crypto, say for example, something we've been preparing for let's say, I don't know, 3 to 5 years into my knowledge. Yet the first few internships that, to my knowledge, that we've offered on those just happened this last summer, or are happening currently, I guess I should say. And so that's kind of a little bit of a game with quantum that I've noticed is the roles we are developing the workforce to have now don't yet exist. And so it's a little hard for me to say what we're going to be hiring for in the future. But if you are, for example, in a more, I guess I could call it a primary role, so like an engineer, a software developer, a designer, researcher, sales/business operations, those are pretty likely to continue forward. They're never really going to go away. But there could be roles for you that open up that you had no idea about just because they weren't ever really a role before that point. A big question we also get often is that do we only ever hire PhDs? And this is something that I'm very happy to say that we don't. Our breakdown is typically, I want to say, about 48% undergrads, maybe 12 to 15% masters, and the rest are PhDs. We typically do not hire PhDs for researcher roles, we typically don't hire undergrads for researcher roles, and typically limit those to folks in grads programs. But there is the Princeton and IBM collaboration called QRIP, QURIP, that is a joint research program for undergrads that happens 6 weeks at Princeton, 6 weeks at IBM. So if that's something that interests you, I would look out for that opening up. I believe, I want to say it opens up in October. Do not quote me on that. The date changes every year a little bit, but if you are interested in research as an undergrad, that is something I would highly recommend as well. And again, making connections is really key in whatever way you make those. So whether you're really involved in the Qiskit community, or if you are making waves in one of our summer challenges, that's a really great way to get a referral into the company for either an internship or a full-time role. And if you are kind of like me when you started out and felt a little weird making those connections and asking for referrals, really don't. The people you're asking for referrals from, if you have a connection with them, are more than happy to do so because they've seen your tenacity, they've seen your passion for things. They would love to have you on their team, right? Or they'd love to have you in a team adjacent to them. If you've made that connection, if you know a person or a researcher or whoever it might be that is involved with IBM, you want to ask them for a referral, please do. Olivia goes into this in her video, but really be smart about your referrals as well. So if you are an engineer, a hardware engineer asking a software developer for a referral, that referral doesn't land quite as strongly, let's say, as say if you were asking another hardware engineer for a referral. So really kind of think and be strategic about that. Be more visible and active in your community. So this SQ.U.I.D conference is a great one, for example. If you're involved in this, we see it in the resume. We've been a part of it because I'm here. Hi. And so we can see that there is passion and effort there. There's a drive to do and be involved in the community. It shows us that it's not just a Qiskit class that you might have taken, or it's not just a school mandated thing that you have done, which is not to say that it's a bad thing, but it also does give us a little bit of like personality, a little bit of visibility into the things that you want to do and things that you like to do, both academically and also maybe in your spare time. And then the last piece is really making the most of your experiences. I know I harp on this a lot, but the more experiences you have, the better it is for you in your long-term career, because you can draw on those to say, what is it that I like? What am I good at? What have I learned through all these experiences that I've had? And how can I really make that as beneficial to me as possible? Ultimately, in my role here at IBM, I try my hardest to ensure that the workforce that we're working with, whether it's students or early professionals or mid-career professionals, whoever it is, feels like they have as much support and community and encouragement and self-esteem, honestly, and confidence to enter the workforce or pivot into the workforce as possible. So whatever suggestions or questions or anything you have for us, we would absolutely love to hear them. I cannot guarantee I can say yes to every single proposal you have, but I can promise you that it will make it to the table as part of a conversation piece. It is always this kind of I guess I shouldn't call it peer-to-peer, but peer-to-peer research that are like in mock research that I do with folks to see what people are looking for, what they want, what would benefit them most. So the videos that we have on YouTube, for example, were really in response to applicants like yourselves asking us for a little bit more clarity into the process, what they can do to stand out, what process we take on the back end. Ultimately, we have a really strong commitment to being really intentional in the way that we try to educate the community and we try to bring this knowledge of quantum computing to the world. For example, if you go to the IBM internship program and you get an internship, we don't just give you a manager, we also give you a mentor as well who's really aligned to the work that you want to do. So you have two people right off the bat who can advocate for you and help you build goals and career trajectories and outlines and things like that. So if that gives you kind of any insight into the work that we do and why we do and the way we do things, the reason why I continue to work at IBM is because I really do see the value and also the commitment to making sure that the workforce that we work with and the people that we take on and we interact with are intentionally invested in. So whether you're part of our Qiskit community, whether you just participate in challenges, whether you just do one-off activities with us, or whether you're an intern, all of you get the same amount of attention from us because we really do want to make sure that you as an individual feel as competent and confident as possible getting into this work. So I'm going to stop there. I think this is my last slide. Okay, that's cool. I didn't forget. And I'm happy to take any questions. I'm happy to expand on a little more. Please feel free to shoot whatever you want.
Yeah, thanks so much for that awesome talk. So now, yeah, the floor is open to any audience questions. Feel free to raise your hand, post it in the chat, or unmute. Does anybody have any questions? I'm never sure exactly
Um,
how long to give it. Oh, yes.
Hi. So what would you say is the best route to getting an internship? Is it like the being active in like the Kiskit community, or like I guess like I just um I like having a structured plan. So if you could like give me some sort of like example plan of a way to like break into the field.
Yeah, for sure. So the question was, what is, say, like if I heard you right, like a sort of like a step-by-step plan of how to apply and like get internship, right?
Yeah, like what's the best way to like get the I guess experience and like the I don't know like necessary to get the internship.
Yeah, totally. So that's actually a really great question. It depends on like what kind of internship you're going for, right? If whether you're a researcher or a software developer or a hardware engineer, ultimately I think it's important to do it based off of time. So say, let's just go with undergrads, that tends to be our biggest pool that we hire from with the 48%. Um, and so if you're an undergrad, let's say you're a sophomore or a rising junior, and you know our internship season opens up in September, and let's say you haven't yet started Kiskit, I would advise you to at least get started on it right away. Let's say you're starting your school year in August or September of the previous year. I would highly recommend you get started in Kiskit right away, not just for the fact that IBM makes Kiskit, but also for the fact that the community is so massive there. So it helps you really get two in one. You start learning about quantum computing basics if you don't know anything at all. You start learning about how wide the community is. I believe last time I checked, there were like, someone correct me on this, but I think there are like 50,000 people in the Qiskit Slack or something like that. Or sorry, no, I just looked. Almost 28,000. Not all 28,000 are messaging at the same time, but I mean, it's a huge community, right? So, um, and honestly, let's be real. The difference between 28,000 and 50,000 once you get in a Slack channel is really not that different. So, if for all intents and purposes, it's 50,000 people. So, I highly recommend you get involved in there. There are different channels, there are different communities you get involved in. There are a lot of local pieces as well. So, for example, if you wanted to talk with folks who are close to you and work through Qiskit together, I've seen people do that. We provide a Qiskit advocate mentorship program, for example, that provides like development opportunities for folks, both development and professional growth in the industry. It's really about making sure that for us on our end, so if you're applying as, say, someone who's just trying to break into quantum and learn a little bit more and see if it's really for them, really diving headfirst into things and giving us an example of, say, like, I might be new to quantum, but I just did all of Qiskit in X amount of time, and I have been on the Qiskit Slack and really into the community and networking with a lot of people and figuring what I want to do out. And I have a really strong passion for 1, 2, and 3, or I'm really interested in 1, 2, and 3. It relates to my career goals in XYZ ways. A lot of people, I think, really underestimate how strongly your application will be helped if you have somebody who can advocate for you on our end. So if, for example, I mean, there's tons of IBMers on the Qiskit Slack and also within the education team as well who help market you to other people. But again, the more you get involved, the more you really get in tune with the community and see not only where you can fit in, but also where you might want to go towards and shift towards. That's really useful. So if you're going to go by step, let's say you start preparing like a year in advance. So presuming this is now 2022 and it's June, and you're trying to apply for the 2023 year, taking this 1 year to think about, okay, I'm starting school in August or September, and I want to be a software developer. What languages should I focus on? Going into the Slack community and asking, hey, I want to do this work with Qiskit. Does anybody have recommendations on languages I should really prioritize learning? Of course, like I said, focusing on Qiskit to get through that and making sure you at least have a strong foundational core there, but also thinking about what projects might lend itself to pushing that way. How many professors do I know at my institution, if you are at a four-year institution, that might be working on quantum things or quantum adjacent things, right? It's really figuring out if you don't have the resources at your current institution, where you might be able to find that, say, network connection that might be able to get you that resource. It's hard for me to give you like a very strong step-by-step just because it depends on, let's say, the role you're applying for example. But if you start preparing for our internship process a year in advance, knowing that you're starting from scratch, let's say, it helps you be a little more prepared when the internships do open in September, for you to say, hey, I want to network a little bit more. I want to talk to people. Like, what do you have offering? What is available? Unfortunately, I don't even know what we have for teams to hire until internships actually open. So just to kind of like the cyclical way of the way we hire, it's very hard for us to predict who is going to have an opening on their team for an intern, let alone what they're going to be working for until maybe like I posted like next month. And so I can't really tell you like, oh, there's going to be these teams hiring. It's also a lot of it's very confidential work. So I can say like a team is hiring, but I can't exactly tell you what they're working on, right? But I would also recommend going to conferences. It's something that I didn't really mention in my presentation because I also know that conferences can be very cost prohibitive for some people, and wanting to make sure that we look at it from an equitable perspective, right? Locking folks into only having these access points through really expensive conferences or official conferences isn't really a great way to do things, which is why I'm also so happy and so appreciative of both of like the Squid conference team to really put this on, because this is a way to really democratize that and build that equity element, right? And so if you're going to feel as though, oh no, I'm locked out of quantum because it's out of my income range, it's out of my resource range to be able to do so, there are other things like this that you can get involved in that will get you tied to the community. At IBM, we try our best to work as much as possible with, again, bringing equitable engagement and access to people. And so if you can get involved with things like this, you're already on a great start. If you want to say, reach out to folks on LinkedIn and say, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn working at IBM Quantum. You are doing really good, cool research that I really want to learn more about. Can you tell me more about what you're doing with lasers or like fabrication or cryogenics or, you know, whatever it is? The researchers and the people who work at IBM are very, very friendly. They will get you an answer. And if not them, they'll tie you to somebody who might be able to. So I know Olivia is really active on LinkedIn. Aggie's really active on LinkedIn. Brian, of course, because he's doing a lot of community work. Bradley, who is my manager. Shay is always really active on LinkedIn as well, advertising all of the work that she does at conferences and the recruitment strategies that she works on. So really getting yourself involved in that. And if you're kind of nervous about reaching out to somebody, say a researcher in particular, don't hesitate to say like, reach out to me. Or reach out to Shay or Bradley or Brian and say, hey, I'm a little nervous reaching out to, you know, so Dr. So-and-so. Could you maybe potentially provide me like a warm handoff, and so that I can get like in touch with them without feeling too intimidated, let's say, about introducing myself to them. We are more than happy to do that if it helps you benefit your journey and helps you get kind of like those skills to network a little more. So if you spend your year doing that, so from September to September, or say like August or June to September of the following year, that will really set you up well, because we'll have already have a profile of sorts, like we'll have known you. So me on, let's say, in the operations and workforce efficiency teams, understanding like, oh, this person reached out to me on LinkedIn, they were really great, they're really passionate about their work, I linked them to this researcher so and so. They now have a connection to both teams, the one that is hiring and the one that is like operationalizing the hiring. It helps you be a little more visible. And I know it can be very daunting to do the sort of like, oh, I don't know who you are, you don't know who I am, please talk to me kind of thing. But again, the worst thing somebody can say is no or a non-answer. And ultimately we will probably find a way to be able to connect you to somebody who will have the opportunity and the time to talk to you. So if I had to really do it within like a step-by-step way in a very generalized sense, really prepare 1 year in advance to give yourself time to really craft your application in a way that is strong enough to show who you are and what you want to do, but also strong enough for you to be able to build those connections over the course of that year. So if by, let's say, September, I know my months, I promise, it's just a Sunday. So if by, let's say, May or June, you feel like you don't have any connections, you have not reached out to anybody, that doesn't feel like it's too short of a time for you to still be able to do so. I will hazard you though, however, of connecting with folks, specifically at IBM around the May, June time, just because internships start at that time. So it might be a little bit of a lag and a delay. But other than that, so long as you set your foundations right of the education pieces, the engagement with, say, Qiskit or student conferences or student events or student orgs, those will set you up really, really, really well. And you can do a lot in a year, a lot more than you think you can do in a year. That sets you apart from other candidates who, let's say, might be a year ahead of you in school, but don't really have the experiences outside of the classroom that really set them apart. I can't tell you how many applications I see where we've actually seen applicants who are really, really strong outside of the classroom because they've done so much or they've engaged so heavily with Qiskit or whatever other community that really set them apart from somebody a year ahead of them in school who have maybe taken like core classes that you might think are more required. But they have shown, these students who, let's say, are really active outside the classroom have already shown the passion, the dedication, and the effort outside of the classroom, which makes them a little more attractive to us. That being said, if you are missing a critical skill, so let's say a specific coding language, I don't want to say that fully discounts you, but it does make your internship experience very, very difficult and very challenging. So if you do get hired and you don't really even know how to code in a coding role, you're not going to have a great time. Understandably so, because you can't really do the work. And it's not even and I don't say this as a way to scare you, but I mean it as I want you to get the most of every experience ever you've ever had. And so if you are, let's say, spending 20 hours a week extra on top of your internship trying to learn how to code while in the internship, you're not doing yourself a good service because you're not really engaging with the internship in the way that you should be or the way that you might want to be because you're trying too hard to catch up. So if I don't want to discourage anyone from applying any of that, but if you do see a very critical skill, say a very specific coding language that you absolutely do not know, maybe emphasize that and prioritize that first before, because trying to learn things on the fly while doing a full-time internship is not a fun time, to say the least. It is very challenging. We encourage you to do as much as you can in the time that you have allotted in the 12 weeks, but 12 weeks goes by very, very, very quickly. And trying to learn, let's say, a whole coding language in 12 weeks is not easy. I also see a question that kind of links with this, but is what are some good ways to get the chance to network with developers? LinkedIn and the Qiskit Slack. I know I've said this a billion times, but they are the most direct ways to do so. And they are the easiest way for you to get to know who exactly is a Qiskit developer. Just shooting a message in the Slack and saying, hey, I would love to learn more about any Qiskit developers on the Slack and like your trajectory in your career or whatever, they will be more than happy to respond to you. And if you see them on LinkedIn, they are more than happy to connect. It's again, I think what I've seen at IBM, which is what has kept me at this company, is everybody has a really, really strong dedication to ensuring that the community around them also benefits from their learned experiences and their knowledge. I've yet to find a single IBMer that I've met or talked to that hasn't been extremely forthcoming and open and welcoming with their sharing their story and their experiences of how they even got to Quantum or how they got to IBM. Again, nobody who you reach out to will ever be like, no, you're a bad person, I'll never talk to you. They will always have either a connection to somebody who might be able to answer your question or open you up to their own network. It's really just about putting yourself out there. In terms of networking with developers, I would say like actually a counter is our conferences are usually used as ways for us to really build community. We do take applications there and look for candidates there, but a lot of the times we don't have enough people to staff a conference that hits every single role. So you might go to a conference and there might be engineers and business developer people, but no Qiskit developers. Or you might go to a conference as a hardware specialist and everybody there is software. But it just depends on like the availability of folks being able to come to a conference in the middle of a week or on the weekend, right? So if you do really like going to conferences, we do strongly encourage that, but then you'll network with people like me or folks in the community team like Callie, who will then be able to connect you from there. So it's not a complete wash, but I would say if you are going to a conference where IBMers might be present, try not to put all your eggs in one basket in the hopes that you will find the person who holds the role you're looking for there, because they might just have been available. Usually, what's it called? Conferences are done by the community team, and then we see who's available to come from the technical and professional side. So just as kind of like a warning or heads up, if anything. I know that it really didn't like super answer question, and that was really, really long, and I super apologize for that. But it's also really challenging to provide like the first month you do this, the second month you do that, third month you do this, so like that level of roles. But I can say like if you want to start a year in advance, I cannot encourage that more. And ultimately, if you can tell us what you want to do or what you're interested in, that helps us way more than I think any listicle of courses you've taken, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that helped a lot. Thanks. Also, like in like current like news type of like so in machine learning, there's like a new superset of Python that I think just came out. It's called like Mojo or something. Do you know if something like that is being developed at IBM for quantum? Like, because I know they use Python and stuff, but is there any limitations of Python that you guys are now working on a new language, or is that like secret or something?
I mean, if they are not telling me, and with good reason. One, because I probably wouldn't understand it. No, just kidding. Probably because it's very confidential. So anything that IBM works on in terms of projects, it's really confidential, to the point where like most people actually don't even know about it, except for the team that works on it, and then it gets released, and then everyone knows about it. It's kind of hard for us to talk about very specific projects unless they have been published before and they're ongoing and people know. That's not just because IBM is a company that's like, oh, competition and things, but it's also because of the contracts we have, say with the government, for example, or research institutions, or what it looks like. So I actually can't answer that question, unfortunately. But that is actually a really good talking point that you might want to bring up if you start networking with folks. They might not be able to give you an answer, but they'll be like, oh, this person has been really paying attention. They're really keyed into things. They might, if this is an interest of yours, for example, this is something that they're really wanting to get involved in, and it gives them a little more perspective about you, who you are as both an applicant and as a person. So I think the fact that you're asking these questions is already setting you apart from other applicants, for example. So continue to ask those questions, maybe not to me, but say like a researcher or someone on LinkedIn, for example, that actually will set you apart from other applicants or even other people they meet at like a conference, let's say. I think I got a DM. Okay, this is a little bit more of a personal question, so I will answer that privately in terms of like a very specificity thing. I'll give you my email. You can email me. This is a little bit more involved. I think if I can pull a little bit of a thread on it, it's basically a question asking about it as a accomplished, let's say, doctoral student with publications, and going to events and being involved in the kids community, how to figure out what roles will fit with you and what the trajectory would be. I think asking yourself what it is you want to do is the first step, like I've said. I think the other piece also is really seeing where you would want to fit into IBM's like grand scheme, right? So we've laid out our roadmap and really broken that out by years and where our kind of overarching goals might be. If you can reference the roadmap, I don't realize I forgot to mention this, but if you can reference the roadmap and where you feel like you fit into the whole quantum advantage, that is really honestly something that we look to as like this person understands what they're talking about in the way of not even just within the context of IBM, but also like how they can fit into this plan. So if you can identify where in the roadmap you would want to contribute the most to, for example, or where you see yourself slotting in, that is something that we really, really key into. It's really great to have a lot of like papers and accomplishments and things, but I think what's also very realistic to say and to put forward is that among the sea of applications you're in that you are applying with, there are also folks, for every one of you that there's also like 100 more of you who have very similar, if not exact same sort of qualifications, skills, accomplishments. And I don't say that as a means to discourage you from applying. If anything, I want you to apply more because it means that there's just a lot of opportunity for you, but you just have to do something to differentiate yourself a little bit. So whether that means being more visibly active with us, whether that means connecting with us and saying, hey, I'm really excited to learn more what it looks like, being vibrant in the kids community, being an advocate. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a name pop up and I'm like, oh, I know this person, they're an advocate, or I know this person, they message me on LinkedIn and blah, 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 blah. Those are the ones that like my eyes dart to because there's just familiarity there. And it's not really any sort of thing other than like the fact that I've seen their name multiple times. We've had one applicant that was talking to us for like 3 months straight at like every conference and every LinkedIn post and everything. And when their application came through, we were like, oh, like we know this person, like where do they want to go? And they were able to really specifically tell us that. I don't want to say that they were the biggest standout ever because for, again, every one of their applications we got, there were 20 others that looked just like them in terms of their level of expertise and their accomplishments. But because they made the effort to stand out to us and say, and gave us that specificity and gave us that interest and that passion, we were able to say, oh, okay, like let's put them in front of this team or that team and see what people say, because we already knew we could vouch for them. We already knew that they had the capabilities we were looking for without necessarily having to discern that from a resume that didn't necessarily give us what we needed to see. I don't know if that made any sense to you all, but I hope it did.
Yeah, I think it was really helpful. Thanks. Yeah, sometimes it's very intimidating looking at it, feeling like, oh, there's so many people who are just as qualified as me, but you manage to make it seem like it's not necessarily a downside, it's just an opportunity to, like, show your individuality.
I also think that I really, really, really want to impress upon all of you that you aren't when you apply to one role or one job requisite on our website, you are not applying to one team. So just be very, very aware of that, that you are essentially, when you apply to, let's say, a software developer role, you're applying to like 8 teams at once. So if that helps you feel a little better about the process among being like with this sea of people, just know that like one application actually sets you to several teams at once. And that's where we really want you to be specific, because it helps us filter you in a better way than to have you in this general pool of folks who can say like, well, those people are good at quantum, but like we don't know what they want to do. And then we will primarily look at folks who are really specific about where they want to be. But again, don't be discouraged by the number of applications we get. I will tell you right now, there are applications that we get that are just like, I'm interested in quantum, and like not really anything else. Like I had a resume once that was like, I think it was like 8 words. I don't like not 8 lines, like literally just 8 words. It was like their name, which was 2, and then it was like, I'm interested in quantum, and like that was the whole resume. So like some of those get in there, so like that also adds a little bit to our bulk. But just be aware that like as you apply, you are getting shopped around to so many teams at once, and so the specificity you can add to your application and the way you can set yourself apart from folks who are just like you is really the most important bit there. If I recognize your name, I can guarantee you that like my eye will go to your name right away because I see it so often.
I guess as a follow-up question to that is that how would we know like what teams are open that like we can apply to? Like, I don't know, what if this is not true, but like what if we're say, oh, I'm interested in quantum machine learning, but there's not a quantum machine learning team with any openings. Like obviously there probably is, but just as an example. So
So let's say let's say you want to do quantum machine learning and like the team this year is full up. They either are bringing it to intern from last year, or they weren't taking interns at all. What most likely would happen is we would still shop you around to other teams because you might find something adjacent, but then it would be also up to both the team and you, right? So let's say you got offered something in an adjacent role or something that wasn't quite machine learning, but maybe tangentially related. It would be up to you to decide whether you want to take that or not. On the flip side, teams also do look for people with skills outside of their team because it helps really round them out. So you aren't necessarily like cut out from everything just because a team isn't hiring. It might make it a little more difficult because folks, let's say, who are more geared towards what a team's needs are might get a little bit higher priority in terms of like getting reviewed, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the team's only looking for a very specific skill set. Being well-rounded on a team, especially within our internship program, is actually something that what I've noticed a lot of researchers tend to lean towards, because they also do want to provide interns an opportunity to get skills outside of what they have initially presented. And that's why a lot of times we do offer that. But again, it becomes a conversation between you and the manager that's hiring, saying, does this align with what you want to do? Like, we really like you, but we've noticed that you want to quantum machine learning, and we don't necessarily do that specifically. Is this something you're interested in? There is an opportunity for that, and I would say quite a strong couple of handful of interns actually get roles like that and end up pivoting into their new team because they were like, oh, I didn't even know this was here, or I didn't even know I liked this until I started doing it. So it's not necessarily something that discounts you. I don't think there would be a case where that isn't happening though. Like, I don't think there's a case where a team that's, let's say, largely popular, well staffed, is never not hiring. It's usually very, very specific teams that might have a return intern because they only ever had one intern per year. And so if they have an intern from last year coming in from the previous year, they're probably not going to have a new intern slot. So that would probably be the only case that I can think of where a team might not be hiring for a very specific skill because you've already found an intern from the previous year. But again, any skills that you have that bring forward, that's why I always say like list 1 to 2, maybe even 3 things. So the thing you really love, maybe a tangentially related or something within the orbit, and then nothing you're interested in, really help us place you, because your skills and your accomplishments will be able to carry you through at that point.
sounds good. Thanks.
All right, well, it is 4, and we're going to be going to our poster session after this. So presenters, people who are curious and talking to presenters about their research, you'd like to hop on gather.town, there's a room where you can see all the abstracts in poster form and potentially have a conversation about research projects that you found really interesting. And this is our penultimate event. That will be our last event. So Tim, thank you very much for helping to put an amazing coda on this conference. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I think that was a great discussion too. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for having me. I dropped my LinkedIn in the chat. If there's anything I can do or any questions I can answer, please let me know. Again, ultimately we're here for you. So if there's anything I can do to help, I am more than happy to. I just want to say thank you. I have so much gratitude for you all for putting this conference on. I cannot express my happiness and gratitude enough. So you've done amazing work. Give yourselves a huge round of applause, and a huge pat on the back. I am so happy to be part of this and just to see such a vibrant community.
I appreciate that. Thank you for your kind words.